First off, congratulations. You've created 3 UX design projects that are ready to share with the world. That's a huge accomplishment, and I commend you on making it this far. Now that your projects are uploaded to your portfolio, it's time to start thinking about how to present your work to potential employers. It's important for your portfolio site to convey who you are and the type of jobs you're interested in. The way you position your portfolio and the design choices you make on your site will help communicate your identity as a designer and how you'd like to be evaluated as a potential hire. There are lots of different types of jobs out there, including positions at large companies, design agencies, startups, and contract agencies. You can also become a freelance UX designer and work directly with clients. As a new designer, you probably don't have just one type of job in mind yet. It's good to keep your options open as you're starting out and gain experience in different job types. Once you have a better sense of the types of positions or organizations you'd like to work for, you can start honing your portfolio to communicate more strategically with those target audiences. There are infinite ways to tell your story through your portfolio, but here are some pro tips to keep in mind. First, for each project in your portfolio, clearly state the user you designed for and their problem that you tried to solve. Second, show each step of the design process in enough detail to demonstrate your grasp of the fundamentals. Many entry-level UX design portfolio case studies are clearly structured to follow the phases of the design process: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Next, highlight your final designs or prototypes from each project. You should also include positive user feedback about your final designs or success metrics you might be able to capture. Finally, demonstrate a willingness to learn. This can come across in your reflections on your own work. For example, instead of only highlighting everything you did well, it can be useful to identify mistakes you made during the process and things you'd do differently next time. The goal of your portfolio as an entry-level designer is to show potential. You want to prove that you have enough skills to do the nitty-gritty, sometimes tedious design work, and that you're open to continuing to learn. Just like the design projects you completed throughout the certificate program, you're constantly iterating on your portfolio. As you make changes to your portfolio now, remember that this is an ongoing process, and your portfolio will continue to improve with time.
I'm Kristen, and I'm a UX manager at Google. The folks that are on my team are the ones who write the words that you see in the products that Google makes. So what does a day in the life of a UX writer look like? We probably start around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning right now, and we would have a stand-up. So a stand-up meeting is short. If you were in an office, we would all be standing up around a desk. And in that stand-up meeting, you might be meeting with your PM person, the person in charge of the business goals of the product development or the feature development, an engineer or a couple of engineers, a UX designer, a UX writer, and a researcher. And that little team would just say what I did yesterday, what I plan to do today, and what my goals are for tomorrow. And that yesterday, today, and tomorrow framework helps us move quickly and execute against whatever our goals are. Throughout the rest of the day, you might sit in on research. So we do both qualitative research and quantitative research. And that qualitative research means that you're going to be talking to actual people. The research team usually runs those qualitative research projects, but a lot of times UX writers help them to craft their questions and also add in questions about language. So what would you feel or how would you think if the page said X versus if the page said Y? And that understanding of how words can change the experience is really important. In the afternoon, you may have some quiet time where you build out what we call a content matrix. It's a big document where you have screen by screen by screen the product that you're working on, and you write the words within the document that are going to show in the screen. And then there are many other fields to the right that have your logic and your thought process. You cite research, you cite previous precedent for where we've used these words or phrases before. And then you have all kinds of ancillary bits that are attached to the words that you're using. Like, yes, I did talk to a lawyer and it's legally approved. And yes, I did talk to a localization person and it's been translated. And here's the link to where you can find the translations. And that quiet time, you might protect a couple of hours a day to actually do the writing, the crafting, and the thinking. In the afternoon, you may do another sync, a sync with your manager. You might have a team happy hour, or you might have a presentation to leadership where you're taking your work along with a UX designer and a UX researcher and presenting it to the leadership team that's either going to approve or give feedback and new direction to what you should do the next day. And the next day you start all over again with a stand-up.
Hi there. Now that you've started to prepare your portfolio for job applications, let's discuss the job interview process. Typically, there are multiple steps in the interview process for UX design jobs. That might include a first interview that's often done over the phone, and a second round of interviews with a panel interview, a whiteboard exercise, and a design exercise. Let's explore each of these in more detail. Once you've applied to a job, the first interview you might have is a phone screen. The first interview is an introductory call with a recruiter or hiring manager to determine whether you meet the minimum set of requirements for the role. They might also be used to determine what your strongest skills and interests are to make sure you're being considered for the right jobs at the company. The first interview often takes place over the phone or a video call. Your interviewer will probably reserve a portion of this first call for you to ask questions about the role, so you should have a couple of thoughtful questions about the job or the company prepared. Before your first interview, do some research on the company. Read the job description thoroughly and familiarize yourself with the product or service you might be working on. If there are products you're unfamiliar with, take some time to learn more about them before your interview. There's a better chance that a recruiter or hiring manager will be interested in you if you show a real interest in the job. If all goes well, you might be asked to schedule a second phone call or a video interview to discuss your relevant knowledge and skills in more depth. The second round of interviews usually explores your experience in more depth so that the team you're applying to can understand how your background fits the role. They're a great opportunity for you to showcase your passions and highlight your strongest skills. Second round interviews are more likely to be in person. These interviews can take anywhere from an hour to a full day. If your interviews are in person, they will likely all happen on the same day. However, if your second round of interviews is remote, they are more likely to be spread out over multiple days. The second round of interviews might include a panel interview or a whiteboard interview. A panel interview is when a group of people meet with you at the same time to assess your skills. The interviewers might ask you for examples of situations that demonstrate your work ethic and how you might approach problem solving. They might also ask you to present your portfolio to the panel and answer questions they have about it. If you are asked to submit a design exercise before the panel interview, you might present that exercise to the panel. Otherwise, you might be asked to participate in a whiteboard interview. A whiteboard interview includes a practical demonstration of your skills in real time for your interviewers. You'll learn more about design exercises and whiteboard interviews later in this course. After your second round of interviews, you'll hopefully receive a job offer. But keep in mind that the number and types of interviews involved in the hiring process can vary depending on the needs of the company, its size, its industry, and the company culture. Each company handles hiring a little differently. For example, at small companies or startups, it's common for every interviewee to speak with someone on the leadership team before an offer is extended. To learn more about what to expect during your interview, you can reach out to your recruiter or your contact at the company for more information. Now that you have a better idea of what to expect during your interviews, let's discuss how to prepare. One of the most important things that you can do to prepare for an interview is to learn about the organization you're interviewing with and the products you might work on. You want to know what you're getting yourself into before the interview takes place. So in this video, we'll discuss how to conduct pre-interview research. The first step in your pre-interview research is to explore the requirements and expectations of the job you're applying for. Start by reading the job description in detail. Or you can reach out to someone who has the job or has worked in a similar role. If you don't know someone personally, consider reaching out on a professional networking site like LinkedIn. Speaking with someone who has the job you're applying for can help you get a sense of the background, knowledge, and skills that you'll need to succeed in that job. Just remember to use your discretion on who you contact, and be sure to keep your messages concise and professional. The second step in the pre-interview research process is to build a knowledge base about the company you're applying to and its products. Throughout the interview process, you can expect to be asked what you know about the company and its products, so you want to be well prepared. Consider researching questions like, what's the company mission statement? What products do they have in the market? How are those products designed? What's the company culture like? You can find answers to these questions in a lot of different ways, such as exploring the company's website to learn about their values, or checking out the company's social media accounts to understand what they post about. You'll want to spend extra time researching products that you could work on if you were to get the job. In addition, asking a few questions about the company's products during your interview can demonstrate that you're truly interested in the company's work. All right, the third step in your pre-interview research is to determine common interview questions that may be asked. Use a search engine to ask, what are common interview questions for a UX designer position? Compare information from different sources until you get a general idea of the most common questions asked in entry-level UX design interviews. You can also use other sources like reviews of the job interview process on sites like Glassdoor or Indeed, in order to gather additional information about questions that might be asked. As part of this program, we'll also provide a list of common UX design interview questions in the course reading. Now that you know what questions you may be asked, the fourth step in your pre-interview research is to prepare answers to each interview question. You may even want to ask a friend or family member to help you practice for your interview by asking you questions from the list. Preparing answers to interview questions requires understanding how to describe the case studies in your portfolio and knowing the narrative you want to share about yourself. First, to describe the case studies in your portfolio, you should reflect on the user you designed for and their goals and pain points. You should also be ready to explain how you use the design process to help solve the user problem. When asked, explain your design process and the deliverables you created. Describe how your designs were tested and refined at each stage. Conveying your thought process is important during an interview, so practice like you're giving a presentation about each of your case studies. It doesn't have to be too technical, and you can show your creativity too. In addition, you need to know the narrative you want to share about yourself. Build a story about who you are as a designer, your personal brand, and reasons why projects were important to you. To prepare, ask yourself questions like, is there a project in my portfolio that marks a turning point in my learning or career? What challenges did I encounter during the design process, and how did I overcome them? What did I learn from each project? You want the interviewers to understand who you are as a designer and as a potential employee. By creating an easy-to-follow narrative about who you are, you can give the interviewers insight into your value as a candidate. Keep in mind that interviewing is a skill, and like all skills, practice makes perfect. Do your research, invest in preparation, and don't be shy about rehearsing your answers to interview questions. Take every opportunity to learn, grow, and improve. Pre-interview research is just the beginning. In the next video, we'll discuss getting to know your interviewers. Let's keep going. One of the most important things that you can do to prepare for an interview is to get to know your interviewers. Is the person you're meeting with a recruiter, a hiring manager, or an evaluator? Depending on the company's hiring process, you might eventually interview with all of these types of interviewers. So let's explore the roles of a recruiter, a hiring manager, and an evaluator in detail. Typically, recruiters are liaisons between you as a potential employee and the hiring manager. For the most part, recruiters work for a company or agency to find candidates that fit the requirements that the hiring manager has outlined. Recruiters usually begin the hiring process by conducting the first interview, which is often a phone screen to determine whether you meet the minimum set of requirements for the role. Speaking with a recruiter during your first interview is an excellent opportunity to figure out if you and the role are a good match for each other. During this first interview, the recruiter might ask questions like, what do you know about the company or product? Why are you interested in the position? What are your strengths? Can you take me through one of your design projects? During the first interview with a recruiter, don't be afraid to ask questions of your own. In fact, recruiters expect you to. You shouldn't feel like asking questions make you seem unprofessional or inexperienced. It's quite the opposite, actually. Asking questions shows that you're interested in the position. It also helps you figure out if the job is something you could enjoy and see yourself doing well in. Some questions you might ask recruiters include, does this position have room for growth? How is the work-life balance of this company? What can you tell me about the team? In addition to interviewing you, recruiters should provide support and any helpful information you need before meeting with the hiring manager. A hiring manager is the person the role will report to or work alongside on a daily basis. If you're interviewing with a hiring manager, they might have more detailed questions about your portfolio, knowledge, and skills. In many cases, they want to know how you've handled difficult situations in the past, and if you're prepared to manage them in the future. Self-aware employees who want to learn and grow are much more in demand than those who can't recognize their mistakes. Hiring managers want to learn more about you as a person too. You'll want to focus on your related UX work most of the time, of course. But don't be afraid to mix in a personal story as well that expresses your personality and your interests, as long as it's appropriate. Depending on the company you're interviewing with, you might meet with a hiring manager at any point during the interview process. Finally, an evaluator is a subject matter expert who isn't a professional recruiter or hiring manager, but is there to evaluate candidates to make a recommendation on whether to proceed with the interview process. Evaluators might approach the interview similarly to hiring managers, but focus more on your range of skills. A lot of times, evaluators are keeping an eye out for candidates who might be a good fit for the company as a whole instead of for just one particular role. You're likely to interview with an evaluator during the second round of interviews, like during a panel or whiteboard interview. So far, we've discussed the types of roles your interviewers might have. Another way to get to know your interviewers is to do a bit of research on them. There are two main places to search for information about your interviewers: the company website and their interviewer's LinkedIn profile. Smaller companies often have an About page on their company website where they list team members. The company site can help you learn more about each interviewer's role at the company. Another place to search for information on your interviewers is LinkedIn. Today, most professionals maintain a LinkedIn profile. These profiles usually include an individual's job history and related experiences. Your interviewer also might include their portfolio of work on LinkedIn, which is a super valuable resource. Reviewing their portfolio shows that you're interested in them and have done your research, which helps you make a strong impression that you're committed to becoming a member of their team. And that's it. You now know about the types of people who might interview you for an entry-level UX design role: a recruiter, a hiring manager, and an evaluator. And you know about a couple of ways to do research on your interviewers. Up next, we'll explore how to build a rapport with your interviewers. Hello again. Now that you know a little more about who your interviewers might be, take a few minutes to consider how to build rapport with them. Every step in the interview process is an opportunity to build rapport, meaning a friendly, empathetic relationship that makes communication and connection easy. Let's explore some tips for building rapport with your interviewer. First, be yourself. Every person you meet during an interview might be a future colleague that you'll have a long-term professional relationship with. In the same way you want to know more about who they are, They want to know more about you. That means actively sharing about yourself to build a relationship, while also being professional and respectful of their personal boundaries. Second, be genuine. This means being your authentic, professional self and representing your work and your values honestly. Communicate professionally in the way that you feel most comfortable and natural. This is important because you want to feel comfortable being your professional self in any work environment where you're eventually hired. Third, be confident. You might be nervous as you start the interview, but keep in mind that you've done the work to get from submitting your application to being in the interview, sharing your knowledge, skills, and qualifications. The interviewer was interested in you enough to advance you to this point in the process, so you've already proven you're a great candidate. It's important that you feel comfortable enough to answer questions honestly, based on your experience or knowledge. An interview is not about trying to pass a test with a single right answer. Fourth, be curious. Keeping an open mind creates more opportunities for you to learn more about the person you're communicating with, the job you're interviewing for, and the company you're considering joining. Being genuinely curious leads to having better, more insightful questions. You might think you already know a ton about the company because you did your pre-interview research, but ask questions and learn more about the people you'd be working with and how they feel about the organization. And finally, be appropriate. Always keep in mind that you're seeking a professional role in a business context. Do your homework so you know how to represent yourself appropriately. At some companies, wearing a suit to the interview might not be appropriate. At other companies, wearing a suit might be a requirement. When in doubt, ask the recruiter. But it's usually best to be overdressed than underdressed. In addition, use appropriate professional language at every touch point in your job search, even if they don't. You want to build a rapport, but being too casual in your conversations could cause interviewers to misunderstand your ability to work in a professional environment. This could be the one thing that prevents them from recommending you for the position. Great. Now that you know more about the people you're meeting with and how to build a rapport with them, let's explore a method for answering interview questions.